This is the Voice of Health, sharing health principles, inspiring healthful living, because a healthy lifestyle is medicine. Broadcasting every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 11 a.m. Brought to you by the Lifestyle Medicine team of Adventist Medical Center Manila, Health Ministries Department of North Philippine Union Conference, Adventist World Radio, and Hope Channel Philippines. This is the Voice of Health.
Isa na naman pong masaya, masigla at malusog na araw sa inyong lahat. Welcome to the Voice of Health, trumpeting heaven's prescription that lifestyle is medicine. Sa umaga pong ito ay talaga namang special ang ating topic sapagkat ito po ay about sa ating mga learning and it's about the things that we are about to adjust in this time of post-pandemic. So ito po yung new normal. So we'll get to know more about it. And we'll get to know on how we can manage this stressful situation. Para po sa ating mga estudyante, so kayo po ba ay may mga estudyante sa inyong mga tahanan? O di kayo naman po meron tayong kasamang mga guro sa anuman pong larangan, para sa inyo po ang ating pong discussion sa umagang ito. So stay with us until the end of this program, and we shall be having a very special guest from Loma Linda po. From Loma Linda University, we have today an assistant professor of pharmacology in Loma Linda. That's the School of Pharmacy Department of Pharmaceutical and Administrative Sciences. So, with honors, he graduated from Mountain View College, so MVC. And that's with Bachelor in Science and Biology. And he is also a Doctor of Philosophy in Pharmacology. So today, we have no other than Dr. Ike Peña. Good morning, Doc.
Good morning, Ma'am Tina. Thank you so much for that good introduction. Sa mga nanonood po sa Leyte, mga waray ko ng mga kabayan, maupay na aga. And sa mga Bisaya ko ng mga friends naman, maayong buntag.
Maayong buntag.
I hope that you're watching right now. You better be watching right now.
Yes, thank you so much, Doc, for joining us today. And Doc, for the information of our viewers, para po sa mga bago lamang na nakapiling namin, tayo po ay live na napapanood sa GSA Channel 37, sa Digital Receiver Channel 45, at sa ating Facebook pages of different organizations under North Philippine Union Conference, tulad po ng Adventist Medical Center Manila at Hope Channel North Philippines. Tayo rin po ay napapanood sa Adventist World Radio 360 sa Luzon area. Meron din po tayo sa Puerto Princesa, Northern Vizcaya, Santiago City, at marami pa pong iba. Tayo rin po ay napapakinggan sa Adventist Hope Radio sa Toledo, Cebu.
Wow!
Sa Big Time FM 95.5. Kaya huwag po kayong mawawala. I-like at i-share na po ninyo ang ating Facebook Live para ito rin po ay mapaabot sa inyong mga mahal sa buhay. And just before we start, Doc, I think we can have a very short prayer. So let's just bow down our head. Let's pray. Our great God, loving Heavenly Father, Lord, we thank you for this wonderful day that you have given unto us. Please give us the heavenly wisdom, especially to our guest speaker and to our viewers, that we may all be enlightened with the message that we're about to hear. And may this contribute to our daily lives. For this we pray in Jesus' name, amen. So thank you so much. And just before we come up to what we are about to hear, excited na ako, Doc, no? So let's just watch this very short video po.
This is Manila Adventist College, located at the heart of one of our country's internationally urban influenced cities. A school that preserves and promotes high-quality Christian education. Manila Adventist College continues to promote the true essence of education, valuing Christ-like character and service above knowledge and skills. We offer the following degree programs: Bachelor of Science in Nursing, Bachelor of Science in Physical Therapy, Bachelor of Science in Radiologic Technology, Bachelor of Science in Midwifery and Diploma in Midwifery, Bachelor of Science in Accountancy, Bachelor of Science in Business Administration majors in Marketing Management and Financial Management. MAC has also a standalone senior high school offering STEM and APM strands under the academic track. One of the notable progresses of MAC is its fully functional 7-story building, which is equipped with updated facilities which not only pave way for students to enhance academically, but also give them a recreational ground to enjoy their school life. The 7-story building has programs, namely Accounting Information System, Bachelor of Medical Laboratory Science, and Bachelor of Science in Pharmacy. Throughout its 26 years of academic services and existence, MAC produced graduates that place Adventist education in the limelight in the Philippine education for having attained top performances in nursing, physical therapy, and radiologic technology. Aside from its baccalaureate degree programs, MAC now offers the Juris Doctor program. This opens MAC's very own College of Law, which is the first Adventist college law in the world. This is Manila Adventist College, equipping students for life and preparing them for eternity.
And that is Manila Adventist College and the educational arm of Adventist Medical Center Manila to prepare students for eternity. So, yan po. For further information, you can visit our page. We also have Manila Adventist College and we'll be happy to cater all those concerns that you have. So, hindi na po natin patatagalin. Doc, I'm very excited to hear what you are about to share with us. So, you can start now, Doc.
Of course. Thank you, Ma'am Tina. So, ang title ng presentation ko today is Teaching and Learning During Stressful Situations. By stressful situations, I mean yung teaching and learning during the pandemic, yung COVID-19, and even after that. Kasi yung once the kids return to school, it's not they're not feeling the same again, because it's a different environment, it's a different scenario that they were at and they are going to be into. So how do we optimize their learning during stressful situations? Yung parang i-cover ko today. Now, Ma'am Tina mentioned that I'm working at Lomona University. I'm actually teaching future doctoral in pharmacy students, and every time I give a presentation or I discuss something in my class, I always start with learning objectives. Yun yung mga bagay na dapat matutunan ng aking mga students at the end of a lecture. Since wala po tayong students ngayon, then you guys, yung mga listeners or yung mga viewers natin in whatever platforms, so I expect you to be able to accomplish these different learning objectives that I have pre-identified. First of all, understand that COVID-19 affected the mental health of many people, including students. Understand that the new normal brought new challenges to teaching and learning. And also, very importantly, for you guys to be able to learn stress management techniques to optimize learning during difficult situations. Yung mga ituturo natin ng mga stress management techniques ay yung mga madali na namang gawin, because I want to emphasize early on na pag difficult na yung situation na dinideal natin, for example, students who have really high levels of anxiety, high levels of depression, and they react too much to stressful situations, I think dapat i-refer talaga natin yan sa mga experts. But the things that we're going to be learning today are just those things that we can apply and to help, potentially help prevent yung exacerbation ng mga symptoms na nakita natin sa mga students. And finally, to learn and apply evidence-based teaching and learning strategies to help students learn during difficult situations. Ito po yung napaka-exciting na topic. Okay, so my first slide is, and this is actually the reason as to why I came up with this topic. Ito yung nabasa ko from World Health Organization, and this is a report from the organization saying that the COVID-19 pandemic triggered a 25% increase in the prevalence of anxiety and depression worldwide. Ano pong reaction ninyo dito, ma'am? 25% increase.
I think, Doc, that's very true. Kasi sa news, it's all over, newspaper and so on, and the research has been done, so I think it's really true that's the impact.
And 25% in a span of 2 years lang, and that for me is a really significant na effect ng COVID-19 pandemic sa mental health ng people. And we don't even have to look far to be able to experience or to be able to see yung mental health effects ng COVID-19, because according to this study that was just published recently in Frontiers in Psychiatry in 2021, yung mga Filipinos, really, it is documented in this study that Filipinos they experience stress, anxiety, and depression, sometimes even at higher levels than their Chinese counterparts. So this data here is from data obtained from general population, but there's this new article that was just published recently by a research group from the UP Manila, and what they found out was that students, Filipino students especially, a lot of them also suffered or experienced moderate to severe depressive symptoms, moderate to severe anxiety levels, and moderate to severe stress levels. And napaka-interesting pa sa article na to is that they were able to identify certain factors that might contribute to students reporting that they had experienced these mental health difficulties, such as, first of all, by being female. Anong reaction niyo dito, ma'am?
What does it says, Doc? Can you please enlighten us?
So I think because females, I have not really gone through the details of this article, but for me, because yung females have a tendency to ruminate, to be much more emotional.
Yeah, especially during monthly, because we have hormones.
Parang hindi pa ako nakaka-relate dyan. But yeah, being a female is one of those factors that would increase your likelihood to report that, oh yeah, I've suffered and have experienced stress and anxiety during the pandemic. The other factor is being single. Bakit ganito po ito?
Why does it have? Maybe because of the isolation or most of the time you're alone. Diba?
You don't have somebody to express your whatever you're going through at the moment. A recent imposed quarantine or prolonged homestay, or unnecessary worry or concerns for family members. If you're an individual who really look after your specific members of your family, if you really feel so much for them, you really love them, you parang nakaka-concern ka, and the likelihood that you're going to experience or report anxiety or depression during the COVID pandemic is also high. So, but then these are data that happened, that were obtained during the pandemic. And now that we've returned to normalcy. Parang
The new
normal na eh.
normal.
Like if I go out to the street, I can see that a lot of people, parang normal na. Like when I came here, maybe in 2019, marami ng tao sa labas, parang normal na. But then, for students, when they go back to school, and these are students who have been in isolation for a couple of years, their new normal is what? It's wearing masks,
Yeah.
may mga protocols in case they get infected, or pag may nahawa na classmate nila, then they have to isolate themselves as well. Tapos may mga temperature checking and all that, may mga social distancing pa. These are, para sa atin, we could consider this a new normal because hindi ito yung na-experience natin before. I can't remember during my life as a student that I have to go through all these.
Yes.
So these experiences here, they add a new level of stress to students and new challenges as well to their learning. And not only that, going back to school would potentially cause anxiety, stress. Tapos some of the students, they're still going through grief and trauma because of the COVID-19 pandemic, grief from losing a loved one or trauma because they themselves have really been affected with COVID and now still currently dealing with yung long COVID na tinatawag nila. So all these challenges to learning post-COVID. So the next question becomes, how can we help students learn effectively during stressful situations? And by we, talagang in-emphasize ko sa slide na yan yung WE, tapos nilagay ko pa ng ibang color.
So kasama po lahat. And that's
Kasama po
very
lahat.
timely, Doc, no? Especially just recently na nag-start na ulit yung face-to-face classes dito sa Philippines. So that's very good thing and it's very interesting to learn.
Yeah, and by we here, it does not pertain to teachers only, like me, but even parents. We have a role to play to really optimize the learning of our kids, of our students, especially during stressful situations. Now, my friend and I, in 2021, we wrote this article. By the way, my friend Michael Pan is now in the UK. He's doing further master's degree studies in clinical psychology. But during the pandemic, it has become our ministry to write something to help students and teachers as well, so they can help students optimize the learning during stressful circumstances. But what we've suggested in that article that we published in the Journal of Adventist Education in 2021 is, first of all, before we even start teaching evidence-based learning strategies, we really have to take care and focus on the well-being of students. Okay? So first of all, well-being muna. Okay? Because as I told you, these are different groups of students that just come out of the pandemic, come out of isolation. They're different group, and we need to focus on their well-being so that they can be prepared to learn from us. Okay? So now let's look at the details and how we can help the students attain a good and good well-being. And by the way, I included a QR code here para sa may mga cellphone, mga smartphone. You can just essentially, basically just scan it.
Yes.
Modern na po tayo ngayon,
yes.
Ma'am Tina, eh. So you can just scan it if you want to know more, if you want to read the article in its entirety. So, stress management. So, the way to optimize learning of students and to enhance their well-being is through stress management. I'm just curious, Ma'am Tina, ano po yung mga stress management na ginagawa mo in case you experience stressful situations?
Well, first thing that comes into my mind is, to relax. Siguro nature. So first thing is nature, Doc. And aside from that, I also calm my mind in times of stress by reading books. So it's like diverting my attention to some other thing.
I really like the fact that you are aware of the things that brings you stress, and also the way you respond to stressful situations. And one of the things that you said is reading a book. That's a good thing because many of our students, kasi nga they're younger, they're younger than us. They're parang konti pa yung experiences nila dito sa mundo. They really don't know how to deal with stress, and they really don't know what their responses are to stressful situations. That's why the very first thing that we must do to help students is to help them learn how to explore and identify their physical, emotional, behavioral, and cognitive reactions when they feel stressed. And number two, to also identify the circumstances from which these reactions emerge. Now, stress at the outset is important, okay? It's our emotional reaction to things that threaten our existence. Pag may sunog, we need to be stressful, di ba?
Yeah.
Kaya pag hindi po tayo nasa-stress pag may sunog,
That's something na Doc.
baka masunog tayo. See, stress at small doses is really important. But the thing is, when we're exposed to too much stress, sometimes naka-develop tayo ng tinatawag na learned helplessness, that we don't know how to deal with it anymore. And a lot of students, because they're not aware of their responses or reactions to stressful situations, parang they just end up to be quiet, na parang hindi na pinapansin ng magulang nila, not responsive to teachers.
So nasasanay na sila, Doc.
Yes, because they're not really fully aware of, first of all, their reactions to stressful situations, and also the triggers, yung mga triggers. Now remember during the pandemic, kasi nga, we didn't know what COVID was. We didn't know its power to infect people, what kind of effects it has. So I've been following the news. I've been watching the news in different platforms, kahit sa social media. But then, over time, parang, it's overwhelming. It came to the point na parang overwhelming na news, ang news that we were really, what I ended up doing was to just turn off. So I stopped watching the news. That was my way to really minimize the impact of the negative information that I get online on a daily basis. So that's my coping strategy. And for students, because they're still young, we really need to help them to explore and to develop awareness of their reactions to stressful circumstances, and even the triggers from which their reactions emerge. So how do we do it? One of the techniques that we could potentially apply is the HALT technique. Have you heard of this technique, ma'am? Yung HALT technique?
I think this is the first time.
Okay, that's good. It's actually easy to do. All you have to do is, when you see that your child is going through stressful situations, and parang they don't know what to do, they're becoming quiet, you just ask them these questions and help them explore answers to those questions themselves. Is the HALT technique, kasi abbreviation yan ng HALT. H, hungry; A, angry; L, lonely; T, tired. So basically the student would just ask, am I hungry? Am I angry? Am I lonely? Am I tired? It is going to help promote self-awareness of their reactions to stressful situations. And if the student answers yes to all of these questions, encourage them to reflect on the situations that trigger these reactions. For example, if they say, am I hungry? And if the answer is yes, so let them explore the triggers. Ano kaya yung triggers? Like, why do they feel hungry? Probably because they were
not silang appetite to eat.
Yes. So those are the reactions, and then ultimately we must teach them also some coping strategies. If they say that they're hungry, what is the solution?
Food.
If they say that they're angry, what is the solution?
It might be anything na pwede nilang paglabasan no? So, just like what you asked me kanina, Doc, diba? Sabi mo, paano ko nilalabas? So, it might be by writing a journal or so on.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. Am I lonely? So, if the child or if your student says lonely, so we should teach them some ways na para ma-forget nila yung loneliness nila, like a way to divert their attention, to focus on a few things. And once we have taught the self-awareness techniques, once we have implemented the HALT strategy, that's a time now that we're going to help them manage their difficult emotions. Examples of difficult emotions are, of course, sadness, anxiety, but there's a lot of ways to help them manage these difficult emotions. And one of those ways is reframing, okay? Or looking at a situation from a different perspective. Do you do this sometimes, ma'am?
Yes.
Reframing? Okay.
Yeah, it's like opening your mind into some other things that might, yung possibility kasi, Doc, no? So it's like being an open-minded person.
Yes. And this is not actually parang ignoring the situation for what it is. It's just, you're just changing the way you think. Kasi nga, yung brain natin is really malleable, it's really adaptable. Meron tayong tinatawag na synaptic plasticity. Your brain is parang plastic, it can be bent, it can be molded. So if you always think positive thoughts, what's going to happen when, because you train your brain to think of positive thoughts only, pag may mga stressful circumstances na we will go through, immediately your brain, because we trained it to think of positive thoughts only, it will just think positively.
On the other hand, the negative to positive.
Yes, yes. On the other hand, if you train your brain to just respond negatively at all times, yun yung talaga, like, that's what's gonna happen.
Yeah.
You'll just think positive. So basically, itong reframing na to is just to teach or to train our brain so we can always look at the bright side of things always. Like for example, yes. So to teach students how to reframe, first you have to let them identify the negative thoughts underlying a negative emotion, and then to ask them to reframe these thoughts, and then ask deeper by asking students to reflect on how reframing helped change their previous feelings and behavior. It is actually a way to empower them so that the next time that they encounter difficult situations, because they've proven to themselves that reframing works, the possibility that they're going to be using this technique is going to be increased, and they become much more positive minded people because of applying these tips. So for example, ma'am, and we don't have to go through all of these strategies. For example, yung negative thoughts na, example, ako student, I've just attended the first session, and sabihin ko nga na, oh, this class requirement is too hard for me. I'm going to fail in this course for sure. That's a negative thought. So how are we going to reframe it so that it will become much more positive?
So I have here, we have here some prepared reframe thoughts, diba? So I think we can say it ito po sa ating mga viewers, no? Especially sa mga students. So I know this is difficult, but if I do it one task at a time, it may be more manageable to accomplish. So it's positive. So yung first line pa lang po, positive na po yun. And more to it, this is not the first time I have ever been stressed with schoolwork. I know that this too shall pass. Wow, very bright and futuristic po, no? And I don't have to do this all by myself. I can ask my peers or my teacher for extra support. So that's a reframe thinking or thoughts.
And again, if you want to know some more tips on how you can reframe your thoughts, please read the article. And I hope you've already scanned the QR code para mas handy na. So because we don't have much time, I think we'll just have to move further. But reframing kind of reminds me of a Bible verse in Philippians 4 verse 8, which says, whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think about such things.
Wow.
Okay, next is to exercise positive emotions, okay? To nurture positive emotions such as compassion and gratitude. And of course, in terms of tips to exercise compassion, try to visualize oneself and others and repeatedly utter wishes of goodwill and love to the person that you're thinking of. So it's one of the easiest way to be compassionate, to exercise compassion. I think we can do it right now. So I'm requesting you, mga
Manonood po natin.
So I want us to try to exercise compassion. So for now, think of one person, isang person lang, that you'd like to utter wishes of goodwill or express love to. Think about that person right now. Okay, let's all do it. We'll probably give you 2 seconds or 3 seconds. Okay, so let's start. So now we have thought of that person, and now let's utter wishes of goodwill and love to that person that we have in mind. Okay, I hope that you've done that, but there's just one of the ways to exercise compassion. And to exercise gratitude, reflect on the events of the day and be thankful. And these events of the day they don't have to be yung mga grande talaga, yung nanalo ko sa loto, or you know, tumaas yung sahod mo, hindi ganyan. Even the small things that happen to you, like with the moment you wake up, when you wake up and you had no problem, you had a nice sleep, be thankful about it. I wonder if you're already doing all this, ma'am?
Yes, Doc. And I think ito po is more on sa contentment Yung sa contentment po ng ating buhay. Gaya po ng sinabi niyo, Doc, no, na every little thing, so maliit man po yan o ano, we should be grateful.
Yes.
Siguro isa po yun sa mga tip na pwede natin makuha on how we can turn negative things into positive things.
Yes, that's correct. And by the way, one thing that I forgot about compassion is also self-compassion. Because what I just taught you a while ago is to think love towards other people. But part of compassion is also loving ourselves. Because if you don't love ourselves, what's going to happen? We'll just be listening to negative stories about ourselves. We'll be thinking that we're stupid and we're not good enough. So it activates the flight and fight response. Parang nasa-stress lang tayo. We release cortisol. It's not good for us. But if we love ourselves and we would just, keep on reframing negative thoughts into positive ones, we do the opposite. So we become better and we become much more relaxed to deal with negative situations. So yun yung mga positive emotion tips. And of course, very important is spiritual nurturing as well, because studies have shown that spiritual nurturing has been associated with positive psychological outcomes in students and can be implemented to help students cope with challenging learning environments. Now, we're very much lucky here at Manila Adventist College because it's a Christian Adventist institution. So yung curriculum nila is embedded with parang spiritual stuff in it already, right?
Bible class.
Yes.
Yeah, they have Bible class.
And that's actually one of the advantages of studying in a Christian institution. So parang promotion na rin. So those who are watching, I think if we want parang high quality education that would really address the different aspects of a person's life, think of a school that would also cater to the spiritual needs of our learners, of our students.
Yes, yung may holistic approach of learning po. No? So that's, you can find with Manila Adventist College.
But of course, if you're teaching right now in an institution that does not do this, you could potentially initiate your own para naman matulungan mo yung mga students mo. Okay? So, those are the things that those are some stress management techniques that are just like what I told you are easy to do. And now let's focus on the second step of the two-step approach, which is now to teach evidence-based learning strategies. At ito na yung part na talagang I think is interesting because now we're teaching the students to study, to learn. And we're not just teaching them techniques na haka-haka, or we just read, or we just heard from our friends or from a teacher who's telling us that this is effective. But these are really evidence-based learning strategies, meaning may mga evidence to show that they are really effective.
May proof.
My proof. That's correct. And I'm just going to be discussing or presenting 4 evidence-based learning strategies. The first one is retrieval practice, second is spaced practice, third is interleaving, and fourth is dual coding. Now, once I introduce this, I'm sure that some of you are already doing it, so that's a good thing. But for some of us who are not aware of these learning strategies, maybe this is the best time to be using and applying these different learning strategies. But before that, Ma'am Tina, you mentioned before that you are in marketing, yun yung parang course nyo.
Yes.
I'm just curious, how did you study? Is para sa mga subjects mo to prepare for a test? How do you do it? What was your learning strategy like?
It's, for me, yung learning pattern ko back then is exposure. So whenever, it's not just about theory po no? So meron tayong libro, so libro, aral, and then read. But it's more on applying, like practical. So you try to, for example, this time period, I've learned about how to advertise. So I try to apply it during practicum. May practicum po, diba? Like internship and so on. So you try to apply the learnings. So you convert the theory into action.
So you know what, Ma'am Tina? There's actually a name for that, and that is personalization. Okay?
So that's good note.
Yes. It's not mentioned in our 4 strategies here because we don't really have much time to go through all this. And by the way, I offered an elective course in Loma Linda University on evidence-based learning strategies. So when I first offered it, a lot of students really signed up for it because apparently they just wanted to learn how to study. So marami talagang students nag-sign up for this, and when I stopped offering this course because I got so busy, a lot of them were saying, why are you not offering this course anymore? Parang ganyan. Okay, but the topmost, yung talagang pinaka-effective na learning strategy is called retrieval practice. Ano itong retrieval practice? It is also known as the testing effect. So basically, what this learning strategy entails is you use tests to prepare for a test. Nagets po ninyo, ma'am? You use tests to prepare for a test. So, and a way to explain that is, parang ganito, when you prepare for a boxing match, ano pong ginagawa nyo? What type of preparation po ang gagawin nyo? Is it swimming? Is it ballet dancing? Is it playing the piano? You're preparing for a boxing match. So, dapat gawin mo ay?
About boxing.
Boxing talaga.
Yes.
Sparring with somebody, right? Ganyan talaga. So, the same way, retrieval practice is parang ganyan. You use tests to prepare for a
I
test.
think we have, Doc, we have a name for it. Mock, like mock test. Like,
Oh,
diba?
yeah.
So it's like,
Yes.
parang nagte-test yung mismong exact test, but it's a pre-test. Ganon.
Yes, and students can usually can actually use this again because for the most part, kahit tinanong ko yung mga graduate school students na, and if you look at the data from around the world, if you ask students, yung mga regular students, like how do they study, what they usually do is just read and highlight, yung mga text. Those are passive and not active learning strategies. But this one here entails that you really have to create practice tests or answer practice tests or answer practice questions or use flashcards. Yun yung ganito. I've used this before. So yung ginagawa ko before is I would just write down something sa parang bond paper.
Yeah, I remember, Doc. Ganyan din po. Like, I would make sa yellow pad, yun, gagawa ko dyan ng parang review outline ko.
Yes, and sometimes I would just cut them na parang flashcards na siya. This is retrieval practice, and this is really effective, and studies have shown that it can enhance learning of all students, regardless of your age. Kahit yung mga bata, adults, graduate school students, and whatnot. And it can also decrease cognitive load. Ano itong tinatawag natin na cognitive load? It has something to do with our working memory. So there's different types of memory. Mayroon sensory memory, like the things that I'm telling you right now, you're watching my presentation, everything has to go through sensory memory, through memories associated with your eyesight and your hearing. But then that type of memory has to move to working memory, for us to work at that information so that eventually it could be stored in long-term memory. Now the problem with working memory, however, compared to long-term memory, is it is only capable of storing limited amount of information at a given time. So yung tayo mga teachers, minsan pag nagpe-present tayo ng PowerPoint after PowerPoint, slide after slide after slides, and then we ask students at the end of our lecture, did you understand? Tapos sabihin na lang, no, did you understand the thing? It's because of wag po tayo ma-frustrate.
Yes.
Because it's cognitive load. They're experiencing cognitive load at the moment because their working memory has limited capacity to store information. And it is true for all, regardless of how smart you are. Yeah. So, itong testing effect retrieval practice, it can decrease cognitive load because the student apparently here is not just memorizing information, but they form tests, practice tests, and all that. So it's easier for them to store it and to move that information to long-term memory. It can also enhance metacognition, ito yung awareness about the things that you know and you don't know. Because pag nititest ka, especially, it's like what I did before when I was in high school, when I study, after I've memorized everything, I would go to the library and look for a book that is covering the same topic na study ko. And then I would look at the practice test, and then there'd be questions there. And then that's the only time that I found out, oh, ganito pala yung interpretation ng concept na to. Oh, ito pala yung importante dito because it was asked by that certain author. So parang ganyan. So basically, it's just using tests to prepare for a test, and it is really, really effective. So for students, yun yung sinabi ko kanina, flashcards, and you can make questions, and you can trade tests maghanap po tayo ng study partner.
Magtanungan po
Magtanungan,
kayo.
that's correct. But really, what is so critical about review practice is you have to make sure that you check your materials for accuracy. Okay, wag yung basta-basta gagawa ka ng practices tapos hindi naman pala tama. You will, I guarantee you, you will really fail. Okay? So make sure that after you've created the practice test, you'll make sure that you check your materials for accuracy. Okay? Now, retrieval practice is hard, really, because it is a different level of, it involves a different way of thinking, and parang you should, over time, you become professional at doing it, but from the very beginning, it's going to be difficult. In fact, I asked one of my students to do this, and she's a graduate school student. So she said, yes, I'll try to implement it. Tapos the next day when I checked, she was like, oh, Dr. De La Peña, that was very, very difficult. I told her, yes, it's going to be very difficult at first, but over time, if you keep on doing it, it's going to be easier. So that was the first technique. Ano nga ba yon? It is retrieval practice. Okay, and by the way, this box naman na to, it provides some technologies for teachers to be able to use in their classrooms that incorporate retrieval practice. One of those is Kahoot. Have you heard of Kahoot?
This is the first time also.
Oh, okay. So it's actually a technology. I don't know if there's a subscription required, but para siyang quizzes. Like the teachers can just implement it. So basically, ideally, what the teacher should do is not just be presenting slide after slide after slide. You should incorporate or embed some mga presentations nila, yung para mga questions, so that students can reflect on answers, and for the teachers as well to gauge whether or not may nalalaman talaga yung mga students nila. Hindi yung basta-basta lang, hala. Provide information here and there. So, Kahoot, Poll Everywhere, Quizlets, yun yung mga technologies that we can probably use as teachers. And these technologies incorporate evidence-based learning strategies. Second is spaced practice. Ano itong spaced practice? Just to make the long story short, it is not cramming. Because sometimes yung tendency ng mga students natin, if they have a quiz
last minute review na po.
Last minute na kaagad, di ba? So they will spend 5 hours, 6 hours, hindi na natutulog, right? Because they have a quiz the following day. But spaced practice is different. You really have to distribute it. You really have to be proactive in designing a schedule that allows you to revisit yung mga things that you have learned, let's say, during the past week.
Taking time.
Yes. It is really effective. And for teachers naman, the students that we're dealing with right now, as I told you, they're not the same as the students we've dealt with in 2019 and earlier than that. So for teachers, if we keep on giving quizzes on a daily basis to students, I think it's just gonna do more harm to them than good. I think it's good it's gonna benefit the learning if we space the use of quizzes as well and assessment to reduce student stress and anxiety. Because if we bombard too much our students with tests and too much information, it's gonna cause further stress. Burnout din sila. Yeah, so we really have to be proactive as well in designing the scheduling of our quizzes so that we can reduce anxiety and stress levels of our students. So, by the way, yung mga techniques na to, you can just look for these and you can read them in greater detail at learningscientist.org. Again, it's learningscientist.org. Okay, if you want to introduce this to your kids or your college students and all that. So spaced practice is basically scheduling and also reviewing. Kahit na wala ka ng quiz for that week on a topic that you've studied earlier, you still need to review para hindi mo forget yung information. Okay, next is interleaving. Interleaving. Ano tong interleaving? Okay, it is studying materials in a mixed rather than blocked or sequential fashion. Kasi nga, sometimes what we do is when we study, it's parang we go by chapters, diba? Chapter 1, we study everything in chapter 1. Chapter 2, we study everything in chapter 2. Tapos ganyan, sequential. But what this learning technique entails is, for example, chapter 1 covers cardiovascular, anatomy, and physiology and pathophysiology. So what you're going to do is study cardiovascular physiology first. The next is go to chapter 2, go to renal physiology. So, or renal, if the first part of chapter 1 is anatomy and first part of chapter 2 is anatomy, so you basically cover everything first and not go from anatomy to physiology and pathophysiology and down. So you're mixing it. So that by doing this, you'll be able to see relationships between the concepts that you are talking about or you're trying to learn.
I think if that is in parang correlated. Diba,
That's
Doc?
correct. Yeah, that's correct. And by the way, this technique is really helpful and has been proven to help when you want to study materials that involve calculation or require problem solving. So I know yung mga schools natin kahit in the medical field may mga calculations involved, especially pharmacy. So if you're presented with a difficult task that involves calculation, this technique would really help. And if you have more questions about this one, kasi wala tayong, if you have more questions about this one, just feel free to send me an email. And finally, oh, by the way, sa interleaving, while it is good to switch between ideas, don't switch too often or spend too little time on any one idea. You need to make sure that you understand them. And interleaving, just like any other evidence-based learning strategies, will feel harder than studying the same thing for a long time. But don't worry, this is actually helpful to your learning. And finally, the technique called dual coding. So I'm going to ask you again, Ma'am Tina, how do you study? Let's say may mga PowerPoint or you're studying from the things that are taught in book. Do you just rewrite them, or do you do something like you make figures or drawing?
Most likely after that specific discussion, I would immediately parang i-rewrite ko yung natutunan ko. So that's for me to test kung may na-retain. So that's how I studied back then.
Yes, and there's also a good strategy to go with it, and that is creating pictures, especially if you're studying anatomy. So mga students natin, or in courses that are related to the medical field, once you, instead of rewriting all your notes, potentially you can make drawings of everything. Okay? Illustrations, yes. Okay? And for teachers naman, my advice is we also use dual coding when we teach our students, not just slides after slides of words and words and words. Kasi nga, may mga teachers kasi sometimes they just like putting
and ang mga estudyante is sabi nakakaantok. It's like just reading.
So for myself, I try to incorporate a lot of drawing in my slides because I believe that a picture is worth 1,000 words.
Yes.
Diba? And it's also going to decrease cognitive load, yung describe ko kanina, because now you're just introducing one type of information for students and you're not overwhelming them.
Ma-overload kasi yung pag-iisip po
That's true, okay? So teachers, please remember, as much as possible, we should not just be using words in our slides, but also drawing. And of course, for students, you can look at your class materials and find visuals or create visuals, or create drawings, make your notes very colorful and come up with different ways to represent the information visually, for example, via infographic, timeline, cartoon strip, or diagrams of parts that work together. You know what was interesting is that although I'm teaching graduate school students, yung mga talagang, they're not college students, they've already gotten their degree. But then during one of my assignments in class, I asked them to make drawings of the kidney, of the nephron. Okay? Kahit mga graduate school students na sila. But I asked them to do it because I want them to exercise this highly effective evidence-based learning strategy, and that is dual coding. And the feedback was, after they've done it, they said, we've learned anatomy even much more than just memorizing information. Because dual coding is really recruiting different senses, different strategies, and put them all together so you can recall information much better. Okay, so learning becomes much more enjoyable, fun, and colorful when you use this highly effective learning technique. So yun po, the 4 top evidence-based learning strategies that we can then implement after we have introduced stress management techniques to students. Meron po kayong questions, ma'am?
I think we'll check on our So, we have sa ating Facebook page. Kung kayo po ay mayroong katanungan, feel free po habang kasama po natin si Dr. Ike. If you may clarification po kayo about the topic on learning and teaching on this or difficult situation. So, ilan lamang po yun sa ating natutunan. But I think we have a prepared question here for you, Doc. So, in terms of sa teaching po, can you differentiate, Doc, what is synchronized and asynchronized learning or teaching po?
Okay. So, ito yung mga terms na that we've heard over and over again during the pandemic, no? Yung synchronous and asynchronous learning. I'd like to think of it this way. You know, one of the most fascinating event in the Olympics is synchronized swimming. Diba? Do you enjoy watching synchronized swimming too? So in synchronized swimming, they all perform the acts at the same time, diba? Sabay-sabay. So that's synchronized swimming. Now, synchronous learning is kind of similar to that because what happens is the teacher teaches them content and introduces them to introduce content to students while the students are learning about that content at the same time. So it could be online or it could be in the classroom. And one example ng online na synchronous media of instruction is through Zoom. Okay, like what happened during the pandemic. So we're using Zoom, teachers are teaching using Zoom, tapos mga students, they're learning at the same time while the information is being provided by the teacher. Asynchronous learning, on the other hand, is, you know, parang yung module. You give students some modules to complete that they can complete depende sa kanila, okay, at their own pace, at their own time, but they still have to turn it in after, let's say, 1 week. So yun yung differences between these two modes of teaching or learning.
And I think sa tingin niyo po, sa pananaw niyo, Doc, ano po kaya ang most likely nagagamit sa time ngayon after what we have gone through during the pandemic?
So, I would say before the pandemic, yung mga institutions were very much wary about using online platform of teaching because we're hesitant. It might not produce learning gains to students. But over time, especially when COVID came, and I think COVID was a great teacher, schools have learned to adopt this technology, and at the same time, parang they're trying to use now the hybrid type of teaching. So some could learn through Zoom, and some could, while at the same time, you're introducing content through Zoom sa classroom ninyo. So in terms of effectiveness naman, I'm still looking for articles to really show that there's a difference in terms of effect of these different modes of learning. But one article that came across was on the impact of producing or giving psychosocial support to students with these different modes of learning. Yung asynchronous kasi because students are just learning independently, or they're not learning with their friends, with their peers. So sometimes kulang sila ng psychosocial report, yung the emotion or the social support that is also required for learning. So parang less yung impact or less yung pag-address ng psychosocial needs ng mga students if they're learning asynchronously.
And naalala ko, Doc, I came across sa online platform lang, one student is sharing her experience dito sa new normal, no? Sinasabi niya na parang before, since online, like sa bahay lang, so they have all the time to perform and to do their task and so on. And now with this new normal, they are really coping up.
Yeah, it's true. And it's not only true for the person that you talk to, but even in the US, that's also the major complaints of the students.
Yeah, and I think that's one thing na talaga namang dapat bigyang atensyon ng mga professor, ng mga educators to also support the emotional stability of your students.
And the last thing that we should do is punish our students. we should be friendly to our students
Yes.
because these are
Mas
really-
gentle po ang approach.
Yeah.
And with that, Doc, since we don't have much of the time, medyo nakakabitin, pero I think we would like to just ask you about your last message to our educators and even to our students na nanonood po sa atin ngayon.
So for students, I just want to tell you that learning is not an easy ride. It's not easy at all times. Sometimes you'll have to go through large amounts of difficulties, and they could even be exacerbated by stressful situations like the COVID pandemic and going back to the classroom, experiencing all those back to school anxiety and all that. But one thing that I've learned is that what really matters during these stressful situations is resilience. Okay, I think it's even more powerful than intellect, because yung mga bata or mga learners that they're really gifted, really intelligent, but then exposed to stressful circumstances, they perform poorly. Whereas may mga students naman that they're just average, but because they have developed resilience, they develop coping strategies to cope with stressful situations, they still become successful. So let's try to be positive at all times, and some of the techniques that we offer here are really for you to be able to deal with adverse situations. Para sa teachers naman, I've said it a while ago, we should not just be teaching content. Because we're dealing with different types of students now, we should also be looking after their well-being. So we should also, I hope, be trained now to deal with yung mga what the students are going through. I think it's going to help them, and of course, enjoy teaching.
Yun.
Because if we're happy teachers, and happiness is infectious, we engender happy students din.
Wow. Very inspiring yung last words mo, Doc, no? So, yun, share natin yung happiness doon sa mga kasama po nating teachers ngayon. If we practice being happy on our own. So, yun po. We have learned so many things from you, Doc. And thank you so much once
thank
again
you.
for joining us today sa ating pong Voice of Health. And of course, we also don't want to miss thanking our viewers, no, Doc, for
course, yeah.
for being with us. Nawawag po kayong magsawa, natutukan kami every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday po sa GSAT Channel 37, Digital Receiver Channel 45, at sa ating Facebook pages of different organizations tulad ng Adventist Medical Center Manila and Hope Channel North Philippines. Ganyan din po sa AWR, Adventist World Radio sa Luzon area, at marami po pong iba. Sa Adventist Hope Radio, Toledo, Cebu, pati na rin po sa Big Time FM 95.5. At sa ganap pong 12 to 1, tayo rin po ay mapapanood sa DWBL 1242 kHz. Kaya narito po ang ating programa. Lagi po nating pakakanta at tatandaan ang Heaven's Prescription upang tayo'y maging masaya, masigla at malusog. Ito po ang Voice of Health na nagsasabing, lifestyle is medicine. Maraming salamat po.
Thank you so much.
This is the Voice of Health.